Welcome everyone to Navigating Resources to Support the Career Goals of Students with Disabilities with Departments of Rehab and Westside Regional Center and CAE. I welcome you all to this workshop in order to help students with disabilities to learn more about their resources in enhancing their skill set towards additional employment. We welcome you all and thank you for being here. I will go over the agenda real quick. So we will begin with Westside Regional Center, who will be presenting their resources for about 25-30 minutes. And then Lead Danera will introduce herself. We also have Sandra Lopez from Westside Department of Rehab, Department of Rehab, who will also present about their resources. And we have two colleagues from Center for Accessible Education, Mr. Addison Whiteman and Grace Clifford will talk about their services. And I will be discussing our resources here at the Career Center. So without further ado, let's begin with Lee Danera at Westside Regional Center. Did you want me to stop share? Go ahead.
Thank you, Sanaz. Yes, I'll go ahead and I'll share my screen if that's okay. Can you see my screen? Perfect, thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to share information on employment-focused support services available through Westside Regional Center. My name is Lidinera Amador. I go by Liddy for short, so you can call me Liddy if you'd like. My role with WRC is as a quality assurance specialist for our employment services. So in my role, I have the opportunity to work alongside various of our service providers and also community partners. So I'm really excited to be here to share information. So,
Liddy,
yes.
I am so sorry to interrupt you. We can't see your screen. I think Sanaz is working on making sure that happens.
Oh, okay. No worries.
Just one moment.
Okay.
And Sanaz, if you want to make me co-host, I can go ahead and kind of try to work things while you're.
I have never had that happen. Why?
I don't know. Is it related at all to this message I got when I signed in saying that we are in focus view? Does that keep it on only Sanaz maybe?
I'm thinking the same thing. I've never seen that before. So if you turn that off, maybe this will help. It says that only the host and the co-hosts can see people's faces and such.
So what do I have to do about it?
Turn off focus mode somehow?
Sanaz, go ahead and make me co-host. I'll see what I can do. I think it's probably going to be in settings. It might be in settings in your Zoom when you set up the meeting.
Really?
Sorry,
In the
everyone.
meantime, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming here. My name is Sam Hirsch. I'm going to be one of the co-moderators here. And thank you all very much for joining us. As Kim said in her email, I've been a client of many of these resources for 14 years, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to share how they've helped me, and hopefully we can spend some time here brainstorming about how these resources can help our students. So I'm very grateful that Sandra and Liddy are here and that you all had the opportunity to meet them. So thank you very much.
And I would like to thank Sam, special thank you to Sam and Sanaz But Sam was instrumental in making sure that he brought everyone here today, and he has done tremendous work on this workshop. So thank you, Sam. And now we can see the screen. So we are good.
I did it by sharing my own screen. Can I continue that way, Liddy? Can everyone see Liddy's screen now?
Can you see it okay?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
thank
okay,
God.
perfect.
No, we
Thank
can
you.
see Sanaz's, but not Liddy's.
Not me. Okay, we could, you want to share yours, Sanaz? That's for me.
No problem.
Okay, yeah, because I'm co-host.
You can see that?
Yes.
I
yeah.
can.
Yes. Okay. See that.
Go for it. I'm so sorry, Liddy.
No worries, it's okay. It happens with the virtual world. So I'm Liddy. Nice to meet everyone. If we could move on to the second page, please. Perfect, thank you. So we'll start with a brief introduction to Westside Regional Center. Services can be provided up to a lifetime, up to a person may decide to exit our system. So Westside Regional Center is one of the 21 regional centers that provide services to persons aged 3 and above with a disability pursuant to the Land-Term Act, and infants and toddlers birth to 36 months who have a need for early intervention services and who meet the eligibility criteria for the California Early Start Program. So we're one of the 21 regional centers, including our address. We're located in Culver City, so close by. And our main number is indicated on the screen, 310-258-400. And our catchment area for Westside covers the Santa Monica, Inglewood Health Districts, and the service area is roughly from Malibu, from the Ventura County line to Gardena, to Ocean to Vermont. If our website contains a more detailed list by zip code of where you live. So I would encourage you to look at our website, and it could give you a lot of more detailed information of the different areas that we cover. And if we can move to the next one. So, regional centers. So what are regional centers? So regional centers are nonprofit private corporations that are contracted with the state of California, with DDS, Department of Developmental Services. And regional centers are funded to provide diagnosis and assessment of eligibility and help plan, access, coordinate, and monitor the services and supports that are needed because of a developmental disability. So with that, we are contracted with agencies and that we call service providers or vendors that provide the services. So Westside would be like the funding source for these services. We also help through our services and our service coordination. We also help individuals and families access resources that are available within the community. If we can move to the next slide. So I think we missed one slide before. Yes, perfect, thank you. So with regional centers, we provide services and supports to individuals with developmental disabilities who live within their designated catchment area. A case manager, what we would call a service coordinator, is assigned to help each person. And service coordinators are very helpful people that help develop a plan for services to assist with providing information to individuals and families where services are available, and also assist with obtaining the services. So the service coordinator is a really important part of the regional center and the support systems. If we can move on to the next slide. So in regard, and this is a very brief overview of eligibility. So who may be eligible? So to be eligible, an individual must have a developmental disability as per California law and regulation. A developmental disability is a condition that is attributable to intellectual disability, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder, disabling conditions found to be closely related to intellectual disability or requiring treatment similar to is also you could also be eligible for the services. Additionally, the disability must originate prior to the age of 18, continues or is expected to continue indefinitely, and continues a substantial disability for the person. And this is just a very brief overview of the eligibility. A lot more detailed information can be also located on our website. I also included a helpful link here that would take you directly to our intake and eligibility page. So some of the services and supports that regional centers provide is that, so they may coordinate services and supports for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families, and every service is based on the individual need. So it's a very person-centered approach. And the services would need to be requested through what's called the individual program plan, or the IPP process. Some of the services, I included some of the services that we have. Please note that not every service is listed here, but this is just an example of some of the types of services that may be provided by a regional center, such as case management or service coordination through the service coordinator, crisis prevention and support, respite services, behavioral classes, behavior intervention services, social skills, support groups, and training opportunities. If we could go to the next slide. I think there's one above that one. That one, thank you. Some additional services are independent living services, or ILS, supported living services, residential services such as finding community residential locations, family home agencies, personal assistance, self-advocacy groups, day services, and employment services. So under employment services, we have types of internship programs, also tailored and individualized services. And it's important to note that the services are very individualized based on the need as determined through the IPP process. And for the purpose of this presentation, we will focus on a brief overview of the services available through WRC that could help provide support with navigating employment goals. If we can move to the next slide, please. So with employment first, so what this means for regional centers, and with Westside, we have an employment first policy. So essentially, integrated, inclusive, and competitive employment will be given the highest priority for working age individuals with a developmental disability, regardless of the severity of their disability. So this is our overall philosophy in regards to employment. If a person with a disability is interested in working, our goal is to be able to help find the right approach and the right service to be able to help support you through that process. If we could go to the next slide, please. And with employment first, we are very focused on competitive integrated employment as the ultimate outcome. So competitive integrated employment is commonly referred to as CIE. It is considered to be full or part-time work in your community with other employees who are making the same money as you to do the same type of work. You can also be self-employed, and earnings are at least state or local minimum wage. So this is all in connection with employment first. Next slide, please. And for our, so depending on your preference and employment goal, there are different types of services that can help provide support. and guide you on your pathway towards finding employment, finding a job or a career. The intent of the following information is to provide you with a general overview. For specific information on like service providers, that would be, you would be connected with the service coordinator if eligible with the regional center. So these are some of the general pathways that we currently have, such as supported employment programs, paid internship programs, and tailored services, also adult day and individualized services. And during the next few slides, I'll go ahead and I'll explain each of these types of services that we have. So for supported employment programs are commonly referred to as SEP, and they provide support with finding a job, being successful at your job, and keeping your job. Supports typically provided in supported employment programs include such as job development and job coaching. So if assistance is needed with finding a job, then a service provider that's providing SEP services would be able to provide that support. Job coaching is also a component of this service. So job coaching, essentially, you would have a person or a support staff that would be able to help guide you and navigate through the workplace as needed. They can help you apply for a job, creating a resume, finding a job, and also with attending job interviews if that's found to be a need. And they could also help prepare to plan for the interview and practice to be able to ensure to get that job. And then the role of the job coach is to help increase overall independence. And eventually the idea is that the job coach would fade away and that you could, you're able to do the job on your own or with natural supports. And for support employment, we work in close collaboration with Department of Rehabilitation. So Department of Rehabilitation they'll share further information, but we do work closely with them and our service providers as well to get you started with that process. So we have job coaching under SEP, being successful on the job, building supports within the workplace, and overall just helping increase independence on the job. And additionally, they would help with job retention, so helping maintain the job. And supports during COVID-19 may look a little bit different. Some services are currently being provided virtually or remotely. So that's currently an option during these times. If we could go to the next slide. So that was information on SEP. What the regional center also has what's called a paid internship program. And for example, if there's interest in finding a job and not sure what type of job you would like to do, you can explore a job through a paid internship program. Through a paid internship program, you're able to work at a job while earning money for the work that you do. However, you would be an intern of the employer or the business, and rather than an employee. The pay earned would be at least minimum wage or above. It provides an overall opportunity to help increase vocational skills and abilities. The goal is to acquire experience and skills that can lead to future paid employment, or for the internship itself to lead to full or part-time paid employment within that same job. We're currently able to fund for up to 1,040 hours per year for each individual placement of an internship. And you would be able to earn at least minimum wage or above, and equal to the customary wage performed by the employer for the same type or similar type of work. And again, internships are predicated on the person-centered planning process. So everything's very person-centered. A service provider that is assisting with paid internships would, if you are receiving services from regional center, would help connect you with an agency or an employer or a business that is connected to your overall employment goal to help you kind of reach that goal and work towards that goal of employment. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. And for the paid internship program, internship funds may be available in different models, such as it could be self-employment, enterprises, or apprenticeships, or other business opportunities. All the businesses that participate with the paid internship program must be in compliance with California state law. And any of our service providers that are assisting with this would have an approved addendum from the regional center. And again, there is no minimum or maximum hour requirement. However, the only cap is that it's the amount of hours per year. So it's also a really good program to explore different opportunities. And then, so we have the paid internship program, and we also have something that's called tailored services with Westside Regional Center. And tailored services is, for example, if your employment goals include obtaining further education, such as a university or a college degree or a vocational certificate, tailored services are able to provide support with achieving your goals. So our services under this area provide supports with navigating and connecting to resources that are available within the community to meet your desired goals. And overall, they help you increasing your opportunities to meet your individualized needs and serve more of as a stepping stone as you work towards employment. They currently focus on 3 different main areas under tailored services, which is one of them is employment, so career and internship exploration, also post-secondary education, and leading an integrated and inclusive life. For the purpose of community integration, the services are provided in the community and rather than in the person's home. And for tailored services, typically the hours of service are between 7 to 12 hours per week with the usual maximum of 20 hours weekly. And they're very person-centered and based on the person's individualized needs. So they're different from some of the day programs. The provider can work with the person to be able to customize the schedule based on the person's needs. So it wouldn't be like a set schedule like Monday through Friday. It could be if the person maybe needs support in the evenings or in the weekends, that's also a possibility to tailored services, as long as it's overall related to the person's individualized goal. It's typically used as a transitional support service to facilitate with entering workplace or completion of post-secondary goals. And in addition to this, one of the main focuses is career and internship exploration under our employment services. So the person would receive support to explore career aspirations, seek internship opportunities. It can be provided in a variety of ways. One of the main purposes is to be able to help the person reach that employment goal. So they provide a lot of support with connecting with employment resources that are available within the community that provide support with such as the following: vocational assessments, career exploration, vocational training, job development, or interviews helping you prepare. They may also provide job coaching temporarily, and they can provide support with developing or helping you connect to develop micro businesses or self-employment. Once the tailored services has assisted the person with successfully completing their goals or accessing the resources, the supports may also fade away. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you. And then the second area of tailored services where a provider can provide support is post-secondary. So for example, if support is needed to reach post-secondary goals, such as attending UCLA or navigating the campus, connecting with your professors, or overall just becoming integrated with the campus, this is an area that the tailored services providers can provide support with also. So again, it's based on individual needs, and they help connect with post-secondary opportunities and resources available within the community. These are some examples of the types of supports they may provide. It's not it doesn't include everything, but it does give you an idea, such as adult education, GED, vocational certificates, and trade schools. Helps connect with community colleges, college to career programs, or universities, enrollment and selection of courses and or programs, accessing disabled student services, participating in campus life classes. They may also help with developing core organizational skills that can be essential with completing coursework and assignments, accessing campus resources or community tutoring resources. So the service provider would not provide the tutoring themselves, but they can help connect you with those types of resources that are available. They could also help with identifying community-based resources that may provide financial or educational equipment if needed. And as a person completes their post-secondary goals, the tailored services supports may also fade as needed. And then one of the last areas, or one of the last areas of tailored services, is they can also provide support with leading an integrated and inclusive life. So what that means that persons will receive support with reaching goals that will lead to having an integrated and inclusive life as it pertains to their overall employment and post-secondary goals. So some of the supports provided can be, for example, assisting somebody with mapping their community to find resources and opportunities available, membership in groups, clubs, or teams with peers without disabilities sharing similar interests, enrollment in classes through library or local parks and recreation centers, or also accessing community resources such as using public transportation, banking, and generic resources. These are all different areas that the tailored services provider can help with. And then we have another service that it's called Adult Day and Individualized Services. So this is similar to tailored services as far as the areas of support. Many people may experience challenges with feeling in control of behavior due to overwhelming things of the environment. So if more pervasive supports may be needed, adult individualized services are able to provide that support. So supports provided in this type of service are focused on providing support for individuals with more complex support needs. The areas are, there's 3 different areas that they can provide support with, such as have opportunities to further the development of employment goals and or volunteer activities, direct their services to pursue post-secondary education, and also help with increased ability to lead an integrated and inclusive life. Job supports also under this service can be provided, and support staff has specialized training and support to ensure access of the people they support in the community. Person-centered vocational training, psychoeducational support, and clinical consultation is also offered to increase opportunities for successful activity participation, such as volunteerism, employment, and job retention. The hours are a little bit different than tailored services, such as Adult Day and Individualized Services are provided typically between 20 to 30 hours weekly, with a maximum of 135 hours per month. And again, everything is based on the individual need. And their service offer options for those with more pervasive support needs requiring enhanced behavioral medical personal assistance. So typically there would be like a consultant that would be connected with the service provider that can be able to provide that additional support as needed. But the overall intent of the service is also to lead towards employment. So these are the general areas of services that we are developing within the Westside Regional Center catchment area. There's also other different types of services where service coordinators can help connect the person with based on the person's individual interest and goal. And we We work very closely with different community resources, and available generic community resources must be explored before funding through the regional centers. And each regional center works in collaboration with a variety of different resources, such as, these are just a few examples, Department of Public Social Services, Department of Mental Health, Department of Rehabilitation, local colleges and universities, and also many, many more. And then we also have, so we work very closely with community resources. A large community resources is Department of Rehabilitation that will be able to provide information after this presentation. The Department of Rehabilitation assists Californians with disabilities with obtaining and retaining employment and maximize their ability to live independently. So I included information on the website as well. And we also work very closely with the American Job Centers of California, or the AJCCs. Our service provider work closely with these organizations to be able to enhance and help people with developmental disabilities find employment within the community. And that would be it for the presentation. Included my name and contact information here. I really thank you for allowing me to share this information. Especially thank you, Sam, Sanaz. Thank you so much for putting all of this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liddy. Really appreciate all the thorough information that you provided. I have a quick question. Oh, and Liddy will be here to network later on in the session. But how does your services relate to students being able to acquire jobs on campus? Do you have anything to do with that? Does getting a job on campus jeopardize services with you? Can you address that part, please?
Yes, of course. That's a really good question. So the services with Westside, we have different services. Like, for example, we have some tailored services where they're able to help somebody make those connections if needed. As far as if support is needed, let's say there's job coaching that may be needed, or maybe there's communication support that's needed. Our service providers would be able to help navigate those types of situations. So they really could provide that additional support to be able to, like, for example, if application support is needed, finding opportunities of employment, they would be able to help provide that support. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much. So now let's have Sandra introduce herself and go through her slides.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sandra Lopez, and I'm from the Department of Rehabilitation. I'm not sure if I'm being spotted or if people can see me, but I'm gonna try to share something. Okay. Can you all see this?
I did pin you.
Okay. Are you guys able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Sandra Lopez, and I'm a team manager here at the Greater LA District. I had really fun interactive conversations with Sam about putting this together and the challenges that a lot of students have when they're facing not just the disabilities that they have to do with school and work, but trying to navigate all these services and tools that are supposed to be there to assist them throughout the process. And in figuring out how, in his experience, this information was not really available, we try to put this together so that anyone that is facing the same process that he did can have full use of this information and be able to understand the path, because it can get confusing and there is a lot of information. So I'm going to try to condense it as much as possible. I know that Lady did a great job in introducing a lot of the things that I'm going to bring up, because as we have discussed, we work in collaboration. We're community partners, we serve individuals with disabilities, and we basically see each other all the time. So it's a good partnership, and I'm just going to go into what we do, who we are, and all of that. So after the presentation, you're going to have opportunities for questions. So as I'm going through it, make sure that you're writing down what those questions are. That way you make good use of the time afterwards. Okay, so Department of Rehabilitation, navigating resources to support career goals for students with disabilities. So this is the mission statement. We've all seen it. It's basically, we work in partnership with participants, and we call them participants now. It's no longer clients or consumers. The word we're using is participant, because they are participating in our program. So we work with participants and stakeholders to provide services and advocacy so that they can pursue employment, independent living, and equality for Californians with disabilities. This is more about how we focus on, DOR is one of the largest vocational rehabilitation programs and independent programs in the country. We provide consultation, counseling, vocational rehab, and we work with the community partners as well. Let me see. Okay, this thing is blocking me, sorry. Okay, so this is sort of the map. I try to get creative with it. It was a little chaotic. So I just wrote down basic steps that happen in the process. So, and I'll be breaking that down as we go. So the first step is obviously you apply for services. You have an intake, you become eligible, you create a plan, you have services in that plan. And on that plan, you're open to internship, supported employment, employment services. And once you've acquired that job, then it's case closure. So let me break that further. So how do you apply? Well, we have different ways of applying. We have a new contact form in our DOR website, which I inputted there. And I could put that on the chat as well for you guys to get later. This is one form of getting contacted back from DOR. It basically finds your address, and based on your area, they find the right office closest to you, and they send out that email notification to the manager. That is if you're trying to get in contact with somebody. They have a deadline to get in contact with you, so it's supposed to be a faster way of getting contacted back. Another way that they implemented the streamline of application is to create a path to intake. So that is basically another way of applying for services. You do a very simple online application, and this is a new feature that we have that we implemented. So we're very excited about that. You go through that website in our the link that I have on our website. It takes you to path to intake. You're able to do the online application, and that gets automatically sent to the office within your area. So that is the newest way of applying for services. And it's up and running and it's working beautifully. The next way that you can do that, it's the traditional way. You find a local DOR office, you can come through the door in person and ask for an application for services. And then you can see a counselor of the day or a counselor on duty that can do the intake for you on the spot. If they don't have availability that day, they will schedule you to come back. So there you have it. Technically 3 ways of getting in contact with a DOI counselor at any of our offices. And I also put in a link there so that you're able to find your office as well. And I will put these at the end. Okay, so once you have that you contacted, they contacted you back. What's the next step? Well, you do an intake interview. You meet with a rehabilitation counselor and you fill out the forms, or you bring them back already filled out, depending on how far you went through the process. You don't necessarily have to have the forms filled out. If there are things that you don't know how to answer, bring it to the intake and the DOR counselor can help you fill them out. So that way it's a collaborative process. So because of the pandemic, we have opened up our ways of contact, not just in person, but Zoom or via phone. So whichever one is comfortable for you, you don't necessarily have to come to the office. We can connect using these technologies, thankfully, that we have at our position. So once you have that intake, you're showing up and you're talking about what it is that you need. So at the very beginning, you're having this skilled interview with the DOR counselor and you're talking about what it is that you're looking for, what services you need, and you start talking about plan development from that very beginning. You start thinking about what are the services that you think you need, what are the goals that you have in mind, and you have that conversation at the very beginning to make things faster in many ways, and I'll tell you how that is. You are going to also discuss with your counselor if you are connected to any other programs, because again, we collaborate with many other agencies and programs in our area. And a lot of the times, if you're receiving services from one location or one program, then we make sure that we cover whatever services you're not receiving from them. So that way you're not double dipping in services. So you need to have that availability of information to your counselor. You need to let them know, hey, I am a regional center client and this is my services coordinator information, and you guys can get in touch so that way you guys can figure out how you're going to help me. So establishing that from the beginning is essential because it's going to determine how the rest of the services are going to go. So how do you become eligible for services? You already met with the counselor, and the counselor is already going to start assessing the limitations of disability, because we are a program that you need to have a disability in order to benefit from our services. So they're looking at the physical or mental impairment that may result in substantial impediment to employment. They are looking to see that, what do you plan to do? Do you want to benefit from the service? And the only way that you benefit is if you're preparing yourself to either prepare for school or secure a job, retain your job, or advance in your job or career field, or regain employment that is applicable and consistent with your strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, informed choice. This is the person-centered approach. We're looking at you and what you need, and based on who you are and your circumstance, we detail what services are going to be appropriate and going to help you forward. And based on that skilled interview, they're also going to make a presumption that you may benefit from services. So a lot of that is if you already are a Social Security beneficiary, or if you're already connected to a program like Regional Center, then we are assuming that because you qualify for that program, then you also qualify for our program. And that makes things faster. So the next step after eligibility, you have the IPE, which is Individualized Plan for Employment. And it's a written plan of services that assists participants to achieve a specific agreed upon employment outcome. So it's a collaboration between you and your counselor that started at intake, so that you're already having that conversation, because it's not something that can be done in 1 hour. You don't just meet a person in 1 hour and you know their whole story and you know about everything that they ever need. That does not happen. So you want to come in already with the intention of like, this is my goal. This is what I intend to do. And that way the conversation is a lot more comprehensive and useful and able to write this plan, because that's what you need in order to start in services with the department. So like I mentioned, it's person-centered, is based on you, your work skills, your abilities, your capabilities, and your strengths. It reflects a positive job outlook in the labor market. So whenever we're looking at IPEs, we're looking at employment goals. And if we're looking at employment goals, we're looking at the occupation. And we're also thinking, is that going to be there when you're done with school? So we have to look at the labor market. And not only that, is it going to pay you what you need, your substantial gainful wages to be able to sustain yourself? Because that will make you independent. So that's another thing that we consider. What kind of job is going to have a good labor market outcome from the next 10 years and that's going to pay you well? That way you're not wasting your time on a major or on an employment goal that may go away due to recession or due to technologies taking over people's jobs. So those are the things we consider, and that's what we use our data from the labor market, from labor statistics to give us that information. And the IPE is not an academic major, it's a job title. So whenever you're talking with your career center and you're having this conversation about, well, I really want to go into psychology. Okay, you're studying academic psychology majors. What can you do with a psychology major? What kind of jobs will it open up to you? And that's where the IPE is asking. So yes, you need the academic preparation because a lot of these jobs would require you to have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, so on and so forth. But you also want to think about, what is this job exactly preparing me for? And on top of having that academic education, I need to be able to think about how it translates to the job market. So that's why the IPE is so important. And when you're collaborating with your DOR counselor, to be able to talk to that and really, really share anything that may come up. And it's okay to have changes of mind because again, the IPE is a life plan, but just make sure that you are at least going in the right direction in terms of my employment goal would require me to at least have a bachelor's degree. Okay, well, you're in school, so you're already in the right path, rather than my IP goal actually doesn't even require a degree. So then why are you in school? So that's how we're thinking about it. We want to make sure that the IPE goal matches the required education for that specific occupation. Okay. So I already sort of talked about this in students in higher education. Whenever we are deciding if DOR is going to support higher education for students, we are always assessing the student's academic record. If they're coming from high school, we look at their high school record and did they get admitted to school. If they're transferring from a community college, we look at their transcripts as well. Are they going to be successful? Because we have to look at that. We want to make sure that we're setting you up to succeed. Once we've established that your transcripts are good and you already got accepted and everything's looking great, then we talk about, again, the labor market. That helps when you're already in discussion with your academic advisor and you're already you already had this conversation with someone in the career center to help you with figuring out how that major is going to open up internship or job opportunities in your area. And if not in your area, then you have to think about, well, do I need to relocate? Maybe. So that discussion is very important when you're choosing a major. And then the third part is the goal has to be feasible. That means that it has to be within reach to you. If you're in high school and you want to be a doctor, there's a lot of steps in between you're skipping. So given that I don't really know you, I don't know how you do well in school, you must be a great student, but you're only at a high school level. That's all the data, that's all the information I have. So maybe I'm not going to approve you to be a doctor, but we can work in steps. Well, what is the next feasible goal? Okay, an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. Okay, let's work into that. Let's work into a degree in medicine. Let's start there. And maybe you could do a job title or a position that requires you to be in the setting of hospital, for example. what kind of jobs can you do in a hospital setting that would only require you to have a bachelor's degree? Let's say you supersede that and you're doing great and you're on track and you're meeting your standards. Okay, then now you're giving me more information as to how I'm able to justify supporting you further in advancing your education, because it makes sense with your path in your goal. And also it would be the next step over to help you with getting more competitive employment. So that is what we're looking at. It has to be feasible and it has to be reachable and appropriate in length. And again, it's on a case by case basis. Everybody's has their own story. Everyone is different and we cannot generalize. So we have to look at each person's strengths to make sure that we are providing the service. If you meet somebody else that has a same case with the department and they're getting this and that and this and that, and you're thinking, wait, why don't I get that? And then you want to get that, you're like, okay, well, that person's on a different goal, or that person is doing something else completely. What are you doing? Do you want that? Okay, let's focus on you. What do you need to do to get there? What do you need to get, support for tuition, books, and computers and all of that? So it's gonna always be tempting to look at other people and compare, but you want to be able to just say, you know what, this is my path. These are the things that I need, and these are the things that are going to help me. So the IPE is basically embodying that, the goal that we agreed upon, and everybody has a different goal, and then the services that are going to support that goal. Services.
Sandra, I have a quick question. You mentioned something about pre-health students. We have a lot of pre-health students at UCLA. So has your agency helped students become physicians?
I cannot speak for my own personal experience, but I do know that the department has helped professionals get into the field of legal services and lawyers, therapists, MFTs. So I don't think it's far-fetched to think that we've helped doctors or occupational therapists or anything like that. I have seen plans where we're, approving doctorates in psychology. So it is possible. And again, it depends on the person. It depends on the goal. It depends on, it depends on that. But yeah, I would say that if the student, meets the requirements that we're talking about and they're on track, they're doing well, and they want to move up, and there's just a limitation that is holding them back, then we can figure out how we can help. A lot of the times, if I'm going to talk about financial participation, if somebody's already working, then there may be financial participation involved, but it may be that the department can step in and help with part of it as opposed to the student taking on the whole load. So there's adjustments that can be done. There's negotiations that can be done with the department, and the counselor has to agree to that.
Sandra, just to follow up with that, our graduate career services coordinator, Erin Brown, is here. I just wanted to ask you, what is the fundamental difference in treatment between community college, undergrad, and graduate students who apply for your services?
Well, I'm actually going to go into that. So I think that let me finish the presentation. That way we have enough time for questions.
Sorry.
But I'm going to go into that. No worries.
Thank you.
Just for the sake of time, I just want to get through it. Okay, so let's say, before we start getting sidetracked, let's say you have a student that it's from high school to college and they're transitioning within that path. So we do have these services, and again, this is not the entire list of services. This is just services that I can think of a student with disability would need. So we have the DOR Student Services, we have work experience opportunities, tuition support, books and supplies, transportation support, as well as parking, computer equipment, assistive technology, benefits planning, career assessment and counseling, job search, interviewing skills, independent living skills, employment services. So let's start with DOR Student Services. This is a very new service that we have. It's going to help students with disabilities value skills to propel on a path toward an independent and successful future. So that means that they're exploring work, they're getting hands-on experience, they're gaining confidence, and that is boosting their ability to be more successful in school and in life. The goal is to have them be excited about career opportunities, have them be successful at the job, and learn the tools and resources so that they can live independently. So these student services are being provided in two different types of cases. We have potentially eligible, which means students that are not DOR clients as of yet, but we are basically helping them transition. So they're students in high school and they're not with DOR yet, but they are able to already start getting some of our services so that they're starting to understand what is going to be expected of them once they become VR. But that doesn't mean that once they're VR, that once they move from being potentially eligible to vocational rehab, they can still continue having this DOR student service. So we've had it where students are attending universities and they're still receiving DOR student services. So it transfers over. This is a service that could be provided as young as 14 or 16, actually, 16 to 21. So students who are 16 to 21 years old and that they're enrolled in school. And a lot of the times they will have an IEP if they're in high school or a 504 plan. So this specific service is basically working on 5 categories. We're looking into job exploration, post-secondary counseling, work-based learning training, work-based learning experiences, and self-advocacy. So job exploration counseling is something that could be done with the counselor at DOR, in which you're talking about, what kind of jobs do you want to do? Where do you want to do your work experience? And this could also happen at any level, at a high school career center or at a university or college career center. That could be happening in both. Post-secondary counseling, same thing. Academic advisor can step in and help. DOI can prompt that. Work-based learning training, it works with work-based learning experience. And those two are basically the work experience that students can do. So we're talking about, let's say somebody at UCLA wants to have work experience and they are within 16 to 21 years old. And they want to work at the campus, at the school cafeteria, or at the bookstore. They can do that if they are receiving DOR student services within those age groups. They can participate in the Weekend Work program. They can participate in the FCCC program, and I will go into those in a little bit. That allows them to work at least 100 hours to start on learning how to, gain those skills. And it could also be extended depending on how many experiences or job titles or new duties they're learning to do. And then on top of that, they're learning self-advocacy. They're learning how to advocate for themselves in any setting, in an employment setting, in an educational setting, and then working with agencies that may be providing services and how to ask for services. So we have a specific team that focuses on this. And also we have, when they move on to VR, they continue that same service. The DOR counselors are able to continue to provide that service. What are these work experiences? Well, I talked about FCCC. So Foundation for California Community Colleges, 16 to 21. It's a specific contract that we have with the Foundation for California Community Colleges, in which they are providing the grant money to be able to give students work experience. They have to be enrolled in school. And the only thing that has to happen is that wherever they decide to want to work, the employer just has to say, yeah, I'll take you on. I'll teach you. Essentially, it's a win-win because the employer is getting free labor. They don't have to pay the student to work there. They just have to agree to take them on and train them. And given the situation that we have right now with retail and restaurant businesses really hurting for workers, this is a great opportunity for that. It's only 100 hours per month, and it could also be extended if they use up those hours. So it's meant to help with giving them job skills, but not to take them away from their studies. It's based to help them with leveling. As they're getting better in their education, they're also learning work skills and soft skills and transferable skills. So when they're at that age, it's a really good support system. The foundation is basically the employer of record. So they cover everything like liabilities, workers' comp. They cover everything for the employer. So that way, it makes it easier for employers to be able to say yes to our students. So if UCLA bookstore agrees to have students work for them 2 or 3 hours a week, helping out, that could be done through an FCCC contract. And that could also be done through a weekend work. Weekend work contract is more for high school. And it's essentially the same thing, but it's more for high school students, whereas FCCC transitions into college. So that's why I put it here. We also have on-the-job training. This is no age limits. You just wanna do it, basically. It's between the employer and the DOR. So this one, there's a little bit, there's some paperwork to be done, but essentially it's the same thing. We grant $1,500 $1,500 that we pay to the employer so that the employer can teach or give work to the individual. So any employer can do this at any industry as long as the participant is reaching out and talking to, oh, I want to work with this employer, and they agree, yeah, we'll take you on. And then they sign this contract that says that they're just going to work with them. The caveat here with the on-the-job training is that the employer has to put the participant in payroll. And that's different from the FCCC, because in the FCCC, the FCCC is the employer of record. So the employer doesn't get involved other than just saying, yeah, come on board, show up on Monday at 8 o'clock. But on the job training, the employer is agreeing to put that person in their payroll, and the employer is paying them wages. But the employer is going to invoice the department. So the department is paying back. So it's a reimbursement kind of system. It's a little bit trickier because some employers don't want to go that way. They feel that they're hiring you, even though it's already in a contract that they're not. So not a lot of people use it, but it is still very effective. And I think that if you find the right person and the right employer, it helps a lot. But it's still a program that's available, a service that's available to anyone that may want to utilize it. The newest one we have is adult work experience. So this one is between our DOR vendors that provide that specific service and DOR. So there's a lot of individuals that may have gaps of employment. Maybe they're focusing on school and they haven't worked in 5 years. That can affect your employment outcomes because it's not so much about the disability, it's not so much about the education. If an employer is able to say, hey, what have you been doing this in the last 5 years? That could be a potential decision maker as to whether they're hiring you or not. So this adult work experience is designed to help break that length of time so that you're getting work experience, you're getting, I think it's 100 to 200 hours that the vendor is going to help you find a job position. And it's very similar to all these other work experiences. but the vendor is involved in helping you get connected. And then you learn a job, you learn a new skill, and then eventually, hopefully, it leads to employment. And this is for adults, so you know, 18 and over. And then that brings me to the state internship program, which I'm going to talk about in depth further down the presentation. But it's another work experience that could also lead to employment. The work experience with the state internship program is to start 512 hours. And this is between CalHR, the state agency, which is regional centers, and DOR. And I will go into that a little further. But in terms of work experiences for students with disabilities in higher education settings, this would be the 4 to consider. Okay, so let's talk about tuition. DOR and tuition support. Well, DOR and comparable benefits. We always look into comparable benefits. That is in our regulations. We really try to see where we can get assistance to help with the cost. A lot of the times when a student is transitioning from high school to college, we encourage them to go to a community college because it is equivalent to a 2-year degree anywhere. And it's cheaper and they're free. A lot of the times when students come in through the doors, they may be already starting with the college or they already have an admission letter. And that's fine too. But that is when we start talking about how much can DOR support at that point. So if somebody is already admitted to UCLA and they have an admission and they're going to start in the fall and they want DOR support, the conversation that we're going to have is, okay, well, I was not there when you decided to attend UCLA, but good for you. Now that you're there, let's see what we can do. Community college rate for the first 2 years. That is the comparable benefit. So we look at the first 2 years similar to a community college. So even if they're attending a UC or a CSU, for the first 2 years, we're only paying at a community college rate. And we let them know, like, this is how it is for the first 2 years. So if you can get any financial aid, grants, scholarships, or anything that can help with the cost, that would be helpful. Once they complete the 76 units or 2 years, then DOR will go into covering the full tuition, because now it wouldn't be covering an AA degree, but it would be covering a bachelor's degree. So once we decide that, okay, you're done with your 2 years and now we can do full tuition, you still have to apply for financial aid. Those still have to deduct out of your student account. So any awards or grants and whatever is remaining for tuition fees, that is what DOR will pay. In order for us to continue supporting that, you need to make sure that you're passing your classes. So we're asking individuals to have a 2.0 GPA per semester so that they can continue receiving ongoing support from DOR. So like anything, whenever you're talking about the IPE and you're talking about the services that are needed, tuition support is a service, so it must be pre-approved by the counselor. So it has to be a service in the IPE. That's why that intake and plan development is so essential. You need to let them know what you need. And when you get that IPE and you review it, you make sure things are written the right way. You have a say in your plan. So if the DOR is approving tuition, they're gonna let you know how much that is, and that should be in the IPE. If you're coming in and you never talked about tuition support and all of a sudden you have this bill and your DOR counselor looks at you like, what are you talking about? DOR cannot support that. You need to have that conversation before you incur those charges. And we base it on your student account. So, you know, you get really good at doing screenshots of your screen to show your counselor, this is my student account with my tuition fees, you know, scholarships, grants, FAFSA, and all the way until the end. Okay, this is what's left over. All right, we'll cover that. You want to make sure you give that information to the counselor 2 weeks before it's due. All of the time I get like, it's due tomorrow. It's due today at 3. And it puts so much pressure on our counselors to get that deadline. Not so much our counselors, but also everybody that's involved, which is basically the whole team of accounting. So in order to save yourself from heart attacks and your counselor from stress, give us 2 weeks to get this done. That is going to be enough time for all the processes to go in place. Let's say you failed a class and you want to retake it. Well, DOR does not cover tuition for classes that need to be retaken because they have been failed the first time. So that's why we're very strict on the 2.0 GPA. Want to make sure that you're providing your counselor with your grades every semester and your schedule of classes, because they have to agree to support that semester based on the grades and based on the schedule that you give them. So they're checking to see that you're not retaking courses. And that's a regulation that we have. Tuition support is not housing support. DOR does not cover residential fees or dorm fees. So anytime I'm having a conversation with a student who wants to go to UC Berkeley or UC Davis, that's far from here. We're not going to say no, but how are you going to pay your dorm? Because that is not tuition. Tuition fees is just class fees, and housing and dorming is a housing fee. So DOR sees that as, well, there are other services that are available to help with housing, you know, how developmental housing authority and all these things. If there are any other programs that provide housing support, then DOR does not provide that. So that is why we don't do residential or dorm kind of fees. So you do have to think very actively and financially about what it means to go to a school where you may have to move in and live there for 4 years. So DOR, we're a state agency. We are, what are we? 75% funded by the state, 25% funded by federal. We want to keep the money in California. We want to keep the money in public universities and colleges. So if there is only a time where I need to do this particular program and there is no public university in my area that can provide it, only this private school, that is the only way that DOR can help with private. Otherwise, we try to not do that because it is expensive and it doesn't come back to the state, because as you know, public universities are working with the state, and private, they're owned by other people. So it's not like the state it's benefiting from that. So anytime that we're looking into universities, we are always seeking, is it public, is it private? And if the program is not available in a public institution in your area, then that is how we determine whether we're supporting a private college. Let's say you already have a master's degree and you want to move up in your organization, or you know that you want to go into this different field that you know you're able to do, but you need higher education support. DOR will consider a plan for earning higher education levels, such as a master's program or a PhD program, if the individual is a prudent person making an informed choice, and the choice makes sense to the original plan, and if higher education is required to have upward mobility with an employment setting. Let's say you had a case with DOR, you earn your master's degree, you get a job, you see that in that job, you're not really happy with it, but in order for you to move up, you need to have either a certification, for example, or you need to have a PhD for some reason, then that's when you can come back to DOR. Okay, it makes sense. You're already in the field, you're already working, you want upward mobility, you want advancement in your career. Therefore, we can say it makes sense that you would want to move up because it's a better pay, you'll be happier, it plays to your strengths, you're good at it. Then let's support it. Let's figure out how we can support it. Is the PhD program public, private? Are you working? Can you provide half of the tuition, or can we provide, so that's when we start having that conversation. It's not just, oh, DOR will pay for all of it. No, there has to be a conversation in place to be able to figure out how are we going to go about supporting this. And then we take into consideration the situation, your socioeconomic status. Like if you're working, then there might be a financial participation involved. If you're not working and you're still on SSI and you're still in school, then that makes it harder for us to ask you to pay for that. So it's on a case by case. And you really want to have that discussion with your DOR counselor. Is it possible? Yes. Does it happen? Yes. How often? Not really sure. We have a lot of DOR offices in California, but I am aware that we do provide that service, and that if it's approved, it's on a case-by-case basis and based on the individual. Books. Again, comparable benefits. We like to inform our consumers of Bookshare. It's a online library that's accessible, and not just for visually impaired, but also for severe dyslexia and cerebral palsy. And it's free if you are qualified as a U.S. student of any Asian schools through the OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs. Who doesn't like online books, right? And the books are so expensive. So this is one resource that we tell our students to get. We also have Learning Ally, which is also free and can be used in their phones and their Chromebooks. Aside from that, there's all these other ones that are online resources, shareable documents like Library Genesis, eLibrary, Project Gutenberg, Sci-Fi, Open Library. That is shareable content, textbooks. If you're not able to find your books there or Bookshare, then you can always have, we can always ask other students from prior classes, or we can rent your books, or we can buy used books. And that's mostly what we do. If you end up getting books from the DOR, we always ask if you could rent it or if it's used. So what happens when we do that? Well, we want to make sure that how are you going to get your books? Are you going to get them through the bookstore or through Amazon? Because we could do both, but whatever is easiest for you. You will communicate with your professor and your instructor, usually before the class starts, because you want to get that syllabus beforehand or the list of books. And I don't know if this is something you need to discuss with your Office of Students with Disabilities to be able to get in contact with your professor, or maybe they can advocate for you to get that information so that way you get ahead of the game. Because if you're asking DOR to support your books, again, we have a 2-week in advance process. You can't tell us the day before. You're not going to get your books till 2 weeks out. So you need to get that information first. So you can either ask your professor for it, or you can also just go to the bookstore directly and ask them to look up the classes that you're taking, and they will print out the books that each professor is requesting for their class. And mind you, we only pay for required books. So make sure that the books that are being provided are required for the class. And usually this is a discussion that you have with your counselor as well, because they need to see your educational plan. If you're going to school, they want to know how long it's going to take you to complete that program, because that's sort of the timeline that they will need for the IPE, for the Individualized Plan for Employment. So you want to make sure that the DOR is getting a copy of your educational plan, because they're looking at your educational plan and they're looking at your schedule, and they need to make sure you're actually taking the classes that you say you're going to take. And if they match, then we're supporting with the books to support the classes that we already said we're going to help you with. Okay. So again, 2 weeks before, when you have the list together, you want to make sure you include the ISBNs, the title of the books, and the prices. That's going to make your life easier and your DOR counselor's life easier too. Again, 2 weeks before. And if they cannot purchase it through the bookstore, then they could be done on Amazon as well. But in order to get the exact book, we need to make sure that it's the ISBN. Supplies, same thing. You know, supplies can be notebooks, pencils, pens, highlighters, backpack, USB drivers, etc. And we can purchase it through the bookstore and Amazon. And we can order them per semester. Transportation. Well, public transportation, we have the Disabled Student Pass, which is $20 for 30-day pass. There's Access Paratransit, and we cover the $275 per trip. And then if you're using your own vehicle, we can reimburse you 15 to 20 cents per mile. So discussing this with your counselor, what are you using? How are you getting to school? That way you'll know what kind of transportation funds you're gonna get. Computer and AT equipment. So, you know, there's always the university's computer lab if you need to use the printer and things like that. There's the students with Office of Disabilities should also have some equipment if you need assistive devices. There's also the library in any public library. And the last resort, if nothing else works, the DOR should be provided with the request. So you need a computer, you need whatever software, because you're doing online classes, especially right now. Then you let them know a month before. And then the computer is a loan. So only if the counselor decides to give it to you is how you keep it. Okay. Work incentive planning. So a lot of the students are on SSI and they want to know how their benefits will be affected. Well, we have a service for that. We have the work incentive planner, and they're called WIPs, and they provide individualized services to help you understand how we're going to support your employment efforts. So we have disability benefits, Social Security work incentives, how you can work without losing your benefits, and then, well, prematurely, and any other services. So as the student with a disability, there's programs in Social Security such as the blind work expenses, student earned income exclusion, and plan to achieve self-support. So a lot of the times our students will use the student earned income exclusion. That is like, because you're a student and if you're working part-time, you're still reporting your time to Social Security so that they keep updated with that. And most of the time they'll deduct out of that, and you don't end up having to lose your benefits, especially if you're only working part-time. You still have to report if you are working, doesn't matter how many hours, because you never know when Social Security is not going to keep track, and then later on they come back with the bill. So you want to avoid that. The student income inclusion will help help you keep your full check and your full benefits. And the plan to achieve self-support is basically like a savings account with Social Security, which means that you're able to put money away from your Social Security or your income, and Social Security matches it. So that's a really great program to be able to save money, especially for later down the line if you need things. I've heard where students, while they're in school, they have a PASS program, they're saving money into it, Social Security matches it, and then when they're done, they could save enough to buy a car or even to put a payment on a house. So it's a really good program, and if you're interested in that, our WIPs can help to get you that information. And also Social Security should be able to provide you that information as well. We do career assessment counselings. So again, this is something we discuss during IPEs when we're talking about your experiences of work experience. This could also be done at the Career Center as well. Any information you need to really understand what it is that you plan to do once you're done with school, or if that particular major is going to help you forward. Then we have employment services. I know Lady talked about the AJCCs, which is the one stop for all these amazing no-cost employment and training services. Cal Jobs, we really encourage individuals to apply for state jobs as we are looking for people. Cal Jobs is a great way to get your stuff together and started. And we also have a business specialist that can help you do that, help you with Cal careers. Right now, we had 17 positions for state jobs throughout, the state, but also remote that we needed to fill, and we needed people with at least a bachelor's degree to get into that. So the demand is high. So really think about state service if that is something that you're interested in. And we also work with regional centers in their communities by providing supported employment services and the state internship program, like I mentioned. So supported employment, it was amended by the YWA, part of the Rehab Act, which is basically having us implement the supported employment program to maximize the potential of individuals with disabilities and focus mostly on significant disabilities to help them achieve competitive integrative employment and to expand services for the youth. So, historically, a lot of individuals with significant disabilities have been unable to achieve competitive employment. So this is to help them with having more of an integrated setting and to help them with earning at minimum wage or above so that they could achieve competitive employment. So when they're working with the regional center, and they're working with us because they want services to help them with training in school. At any point in the progress program or anything, they could say, I think I'm ready for work. Like, I want to maybe take a break from school and I want to go to work. Can you connect me? So supported employment would be the process that we're going to be doing. What happens is that the regional center would let us know what vendor is available for the client to be able to work with them with that process. And that's how we, it kind of kicks off the process. But this whole thing, does not extend beyond 24 months. So it's up to, the counselor to agree to continue extending the service. But it's basically to provide a transition for them to be able to maintain and regain employment. So it's basically providing them a service of learning the job and providing job coaching and job supports so that they keep the job longer. So like I mentioned, the referral form is completed by the regional center in which they are identifying that the client that they need supported employment services and they can qualify for them. Once that's established, the regional center will help us find a service provider that will be able to provide that service. And then the service provider will connect with DOR, and then we authorize and help pay for the supported employment services. So it's a very interesting process. I'm not going to get into that, but that's how it would go. It would go regional, vendor, DOR. And just because you're a regional center participant does not mean that, that you're going to go into supported employment. This is for those that need that extra support to learn a job and to be able to get placed. And once they are placed, they'll be able to keep that job longer and therefore be employed. So like I mentioned, the regional center coordinator and the participant provides the referral to the DOR staff. The DOR counselor and support employment will be assigned the case. We go through the same abilities. Let's say somebody's coming in with a supported employment referral. They'll do the application, intake, eligibility, IPE, authorize the vendor to provide supported employment, and DOR will authorize the job placement authorization and the job coaching authorizations to help them with work. So once they do that, they'll be placed, and if they keep the job for 60 days, then we're successfully closing them. So that is supported employment. State internship program is very similar. It's a work experience, but it also leads to employment. It's another employment service. The SIP is specifically to help individuals with state jobs. So anytime any individual with a disability has interest in working with the state, you have to go through the LEAP process, which is basically a limited examination process that kind of allows them to qualify to apply for jobs without taking the exam that everybody else takes, because the exam that everybody else takes is not accessible. And the issue of accessibility comes into play when we're doing this kind of work. So this takes away from them doing that exam, and instead they do the LEAP exam, so that is more accessible to the individual. Obviously, they have to be LEAP certified, so they can come to any DOR office and speak to a counselor, and the counselor can create the LEAP certification for them. In order for that to happen, they need to have a CalCareers account already. And then the DOR counselor will connect the two. So once they are LEAP certified, then we'll be able to provide them with the internship, which is a 512 hours on the job internship with any agency that they are willing to work with. And then once they're done with the 512 hours, they are able to go into any job classification and apply for the jobs for any state jobs. So the classifications that they're interning for are basically, I think I moved it on the slide. They are office technician, office assistant, and I think it's accounting clerk. So those are the three that they had agreed are the classifications that are going to be in this state internship program. So who's involved in this program? Well, any state agency, DOR, EDD, CAL FIRE, you name it, Department of Rehab, because we're the ones that are assisting in that process. Regional Center, because they have to be an individual with an ID or DD, which is developmental disability or intellectual disability. And the community rehab programs that will be training them, as well as College R, who is doing all the hiring. So those are the parties involved for this training on this program. So DOR will be providing the lists and the technical support and the disability awareness and trainings at no cost, as well as the funding support to the trainer throughout the internship. And then the Department of Developmental Services Regional Centers will be funding the SIPS interns' wages for the 512 hours. And then DOR will work closely with them to set up all the services so they are seamless for the host state agency. So that's how we partner in this particular program, as well as this, aside from the supported employment program. And these are the jobs for that. So office assistant, office technician, and program technician. So anyone that's interested in these three that wants to go, that has an intellectual disability or developmental disability and wants to work in state service, the SIP program is the right one for you. And those are the resources. I put in the links there. I'll put them on the chat as well, for you to find your office and for you to find the getting starting page so that you can get connected with the Department of Rehabilitation. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. I know that was a lot. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God. You deserve a drink.
I
I'm
know
not
I
gonna
have
say
one.
what kind, but wow. That was a lot of information. Thank you so much, Sandra, for telling us all about your services and what you have to offer.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot. Both of your agencies offers a lot of great services for students, and we're so appreciative of your partnership. Thank you so much for being here. We're a little bit short on time, so I'm gonna talk a little bit less and allow CAE to go next. They've been waiting very patiently, and so I'll let them go next. Do you want me to share screen or you want to take over?
I should be able to share my screen.
Okay, go for it.
All right, so thanks everyone for hanging on. We're fortunately a shorter segment to end the day with. So I'm Grace Clifford. I am a CAE disability specialist. I'm also specifically the Director for Disability Services for our David Geffen School of Medicine. My co-presenter today will be Addison, and we're excited to tell you a little bit about the Center for Accessible Education. So the agenda for today is kind of do a 50,000-foot view of our purpose of mission in CAE, to kind of review disabilities and some demographics about our office so you can get a sense of who we're serving, to kind of review, again, at a 50,000-foot view, reasonable accommodations and the process to determine and implement those, and then talk a little bit about kind of the climate that we're hearing about from students and the feedback to get a sense of, you know, how we can support you in CAE and how the university can support you overall. So in terms of, you know, what does CAE do? The mission of the Center for Accessible Education is to make sure that our educational, academic, and kind of everything UCLA is accessible and inclusive to students with disabilities. So if there is an event or something that is part of being a student at UCLA, we will work with students with disabilities to ensure they have access to that. An example would be, you know, if a student with or a student that is deaf and hard of hearing wants to attend an event on campus, we'll make sure that, you know, we either have transcriptionists available to caption the event or, you know, sign language interpreters available to them. So it's not just for the academic environment. We do this, you know, we provide access through reasonable accommodations as well as disability advocacy across the campus. So we're really invested in kind of including disability as part of the social justice discussion on campus and in equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we do all this in collaboration with the faculty and staff at UCLA. We were really, you know, connected. We're a resource for faculty and staff, as well as for the students here with disabilities. So what are accommodations? The CAE facilitates accommodations for regularly enrolled matriculating students with disabilities, so UCLA students. These accommodations are designed to remove or reduce barriers that they might experience in the academic or campus environment. So we're making sure, again, to provide an equitable experience. Our accommodations are always intended to level the playing field. They don't provide an advantage or reduce expectations for the class or create what we refer to as a fundamental alteration to the class. So it's the same experience, but we're identifying options that will allow a student with a disability to really, you know, access the course and have that same experience as a student without a disability. So a lot of the time I phrase that as, you know, the same opportunity to succeed or fail as a student without a disability. We want to make sure that your disability is not part of the consideration, you know, while you're making your way through your classes. Some examples of accommodations, probably the most common is testing accommodations. So it might be a reduced distraction or quiet space to take exams or additional time, you know, for students that might have a processing delay or might have a dexterity impairment that causes them to write at a slower rate. It could be transportation, you know, in the kind of like immediate radius of campus for students that might have permanent or temporary kind of mobility limitations. Assistive technology, which was referenced in some of the other presentations today, we do have a wide array of assistive technology available to students or adaptive equipment, depending on the need. And then, you know, in my particular area too, I do clinical accommodations and we provide field accommodations. So if there's a clinical or field requirement to a program or that a student is involved in, we'll assess reasonable accommodations in those settings as well. In terms of how we define disability, the ADA defines disability as any physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. On the screen, this is certainly not an exhaustive list, but major life activities include caring for oneself, seeing, hearing, speaking, walking, learning, reading, or concentrating. Kind of the way I best describe this is saying, you know, if there is a medical reason that you are experiencing kind of barriers to, you know, your educational goals or your experience as a student here at UCLA, you know, connect with CAE to see how we can support you and work to reduce or remove those barriers. So there might be students that are currently going through the process to be diagnosed and don't have a, you know, as much in terms of documentation. You can always talk to CAE about that process as well. Or there might be students that have, you know, longstanding, you know, history of needing and receiving accommodations, and we're here to support you. In terms of types of disabilities, the overarching categories are learning disabilities, psychiatric or psychological disabilities, physical disabilities, sensory or ADHD. And at this point, I will turn it over to my counterpart, Addison.
Thanks, Grace. Hello, everyone. I'm Addison Osuna Whiteman. I am one of the disability specialists at CAE. Thank you for having us. And yeah, I believe like the last slide was presenting the different types of disabilities. And here you can see it present in terms of numbers, and what we've seen spikes of psychological disabilities. And one of the things that we notice is there are a lot of students at UCLA that don't even know that they can get accommodations specifically for psychological disabilities. A lot of students there's these myths that we're trying to demystify over at CAE, that like accommodations aren't just for people who like, you know, break their hand or, you know, have mobility issues, people with wheelchairs, those that are deaf, hard hearing, visually impaired or blind. And so, yeah, we can see that there's been a huge spike with psychological disabilities, especially over the period of our pandemic, and we've seen those numbers increase. Next slide. And so, yeah, reasonable accommodation. So what's a reasonable accommodation is we determine reasonable accommodations as anything that pretty much mitigates barriers, access to education without altering the courses for other students, where there's nothing that's going to you know, take away from the curriculum or alterate it in such a way that it becomes unreasonable for other students. So we look at them as reasonable modifications to practices, policies, procedures, providing auxiliary aids and services. What's required is, you know, there's you know, this requirement is triggered by the student's request for a reasonable accommodation, and then students must make a request to CAE to begin the reasonable accommodation process. And so also there's faculty, TA departments are encouraged to direct the students to CAE, you know, refer them if they request an accommodation directly through them. So sometimes we see students that don't know about CAE will ask, you know, an instructor, TA, professor for an extension on a deadline, on an assignment that is due. And sometimes what is born out of that is this realization that they're impacted by a disability, and they're then, you know, pointed toward in our direction, and we get students a lot of times that way.
And a quick additional note there too, you know, for students that it might seem, you know, like the faculty member is it isn't understanding, you know, by saying, hey, you really need to talk to CAE about this, you know, that is the university policy to make sure that we're equitable in how we determine accommodations. It also protects the students to make sure that, you know, they're receiving fair treatment and that they're fully supported, because there might be other services or accommodations we have available that the faculty might not know about. And we actually reinforce the faculty that a disclosure to them, you know, is a disclosure to the university and putting us on notice. So when they, you know, don't really engage in that conversation, it's not to be heartless. It's just to make sure they're following university policy and supporting you while being compliant.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, so here's the reasonable accommodation and registration process. So what generally happens is a student may go to our website and they'll register with us by applying for accommodations. And what happens there in that, where we're looking at the application, some documentation, and the report from the student, they're then assigned to a disability specialist and they'll meet for an intake. It's an interactive process where most times the students are guiding us, they're leading us, and sometimes we'll assist them in that interactive process by looking at just not like what the diagnosis of disability is, what the doctor's saying, what they're reporting, but sometimes there's accommodations that students didn't think might be applicable to them. So a lot of times students might think they just need extra time, but at the same time, there could be some things impacting them where they would be benefiting from distracted reduced exam environments, note-taking support, things like that. And so reasonable accommodations will then be implemented, and students send letters of accommodations to professors, TAs through their student portal. And we guide them through that again too, with a follow-up email. There's like a YouTube video they watch. It will illustrate how they will go to their student portal and send the letters to their professors. And then we also provide a template which will have language in there that signals to the professor like, hey, I'm registered with CAE and I have accommodations and here they are. And again, professors, TAs, they're never informed of what the disability is, why they're registered with us. They just know that the student is registered with us and they receive accommodations. And the interactive process can continue as students, as needed between the CAE, student, professor, and department. Sometimes what that means is that there can be things that we can revisit if there is a temporary disability, if there's something that, you know, a broken arm, leg, mobility issues, if there's like, say, a prognosis of like, this will be fine in 2 months, but there's complications, things happen, we can revisit that, talk to the student again, and determine how long we can continue to provide accommodations. Next slide. And climate issues, what we hear from students. And so these are just some of the things that we hear: difficulty talking to faculty about disability status, accommodations, you know, especially at grad school, there's some things that will happen. And so, you know, students come back to us, they report back to us some of these issues that they're having with faculty. And that's where we'll, you know, support and advocate and make sure that students aren't being discriminated, students are not being impacted by faculty. And then, so like we speak for them in that regard. Lack of community belonging. And so like what we're doing right now is we're trying to create an alumni mentorship program. We're trying to we're going to have an open house in May where we're trying to get students together, have allies, campus collaborators come and support not just CAE, but bring their students and kind of demystify, you know, what disability is and get a better sense of community and belonging. And like I mentioned, is stigma and discrimination. A lot of ableism still permeates across campus. Students are still affected by that. And then there's also things related to career and future prospects, you know, trying to get mentors. And that's where we're thinking of getting, you know, trying to get a mentorship program where students that are alumni that receive CAE accommodations can come back and, you know, talk to students, engage with students, connect with students, and help mentor them through, you know, some of the challenges that can happen, especially with internships, research opportunities. And so like right now our approach is to, you know, not just like raise awareness, but connect students and create more inclusivity, a sense of community, because really disability is just another layer of diversity. And so, our hope is to, be part of creating a more collective effervescence where students aren't just like marginalized and out there on the periphery. They come to CAE and they get a sense of belonging and understanding that, like, they're not out there. They don't have to be out there on their own. They can be among the community and be empowered that way through CAE and connecting with students. And so some of the suggestions, for students. So yeah, seeking out on-campus support networks, student groups, CE, faculty. Some of the student groups I can think of is there's also, and it's with campus support and allies. UCOD's a great example, is University Committee of Disability. They're not just, they're out there, like leading the charge and spearheading, a lot of disability justice initiatives and, making sure students are connected and supported. Utilizing community services. We had some great presentations, from some of our allies today, as you can see, regional centers, DOR. And just to put a quick plug and shout out to DOR, thank you for paying for my grad program. I really appreciate it. Thank you, DOR. I identify as a person with disabilities, and y'all got me through some tough times. I really appreciate it. Disability rights, California, community organizations, self-advocacy, and not in the sense like, hey, like go do this on your own, but no, like just one of the things that we want to encourage is that students get a sense of agency and self-efficacy, where these are things that they can speak about and speak to, and push the envelope for themselves, because we also notice that does empower students is when they can start advocating for themselves. Knowing your rights and responsibilities is huge. Pointing students to some of the laws that they're impacted by or supported through, like we have Title IX, we have the ADA, the Rehab Act of 1973, also the amendments of 2008. So a lot of great things there that have happened for us. And the flexibility, creativity to solve problems, and also communicating with CAE as often as needed. So students often ask if they have to like reapply for accommodations, and a lot of times if they're permanent, regularly enrolled, I try to prompt, motivate students to like check in with us, update us, let us know like how you're doing and how we can continue to support you as much as possible. Alrighty, now I guess it's time for questions.
Yeah, I think we're done. I don't know if there'll be time for questions, but in summation, we appreciate being part of this and just want to encourage individuals with disabilities or suspect they might have a disability. It's really common for people to be identified, for the first time while they're, in college or graduate school, myself included. I was first diagnosed with my disability in graduate school, to connect to CAE and use us as a resource. We're here to support you. There is kind of a myth out there where they say, there's no IEP or 504 in college. And although it is certainly different and it approaches it a little bit differently, there are supports here, and that's what we want to do for you. Thanks.
In closing all this, like Addison, I too am a client participant in all of these organizations, and I hope we can stay for 5 minutes or so for questions, but if we're not able to, I hope this begins a networking capability between our organizations. So thank you all for participating. It's been a pleasure to help facilitate this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you everyone for coming here or joining the Zoom and making this presentation. You've really educated all of us about the difference that you can make for students with disabilities. Thank you so much for all your information. I definitely learned a lot. Erin, did you have any questions for anyone, or did anyone else have any questions for our presenters? There's no point in going to networking because there's no students to network with. But as professionals, I was wondering if anyone has any questions for our presenters. And I can stop the recording. We could just go offline.
Yeah, I think as someone who works with master's and PhD students and postdocs, and I know CAE, you can't help me with the postdocs, but I am curious about how, and this is for Sandra in particular, but Lydia, I'd also like to hear your thoughts on this, and CAE, feel like you can chime in. You know, the students that I work with are incredibly bright, and I think many people would argue that they are successful and might not even need services. You know, I've worked with any number of students who are autistic, who are struggling with things like academic job interviews, who are struggling with being TAs and managing classes, those kinds of social interactions. And I'm also dealing with students who have physical disabilities. We had a student recently who's deaf, who could not access Handshake. And that's on us. Actually, it's on Handshake, but I'm not really happy with Handshake about this. But my question is, I get the feeling, listening to some of this, that my students are somehow able to be helped, but I'm not sure exactly where people with that kind of expertise could help them. And so I'm curious, both with issues of physical disability and with my amazing students who are autistic, who are going after these really high-powered jobs, how can you help them at WRC? How can you help them at DOR? And what can we do to support them on campus when they are struggling with things like connecting with their students as TAs?
Hi, this is Liddy. That's a great question. Through Westside, if a person is eligible due to a developmental disability, the really nice part of the services is that we are able to provide support. We have services such as like tailored services, for example. Their expertise is to provide support in post-secondary settings. So somebody may be due to their disability, perhaps we need additional support to be able to succeed. Our tailored services providers, what they do really well is to be able to, once a person gets referred to their services, they would match a staff that would be a good match for that person based on their need, based on their skill. So if they don't have a staff yet, they would hire a staff that would be able to be a good match for that person. And the nice thing about it is that everything is very person-centered, and everything is based on the IPP plan. So it would be, if somebody is getting services from Westside, it would be good for them to connect with the service coordinator, and they're able to guide them through any service that's provided through the regional center is guided by the IPP process. So there are some types of services that could help. And then it might just depend on what their need is. Does that help?
I mean, I guess what I'm asking about is what do those services look like in practice? So if I had a student who's brilliant, but whose conversation skills can be very off-putting. He applied to 60 academic jobs. He got interviews because his work is amazing. He got interviews with 12. He did not get a single second interview. And in fact, in one interview, they cut him off 10 minutes in and hung up on him.
Yeah, I've seen some of that happen with some of our service providers due to the disability. So It varies what they would do. So some examples could be that they might have interview classes with them to help prepare for the job interviews, like what to say. Some other service providers would also, so initially they would identify what the need is. And if there is a need such like that, where it's communication could be a challenge to get hired, they would focus on that as a goal. Some of our job coaches are able to attend an actual interview with the person with the disability. So that's helpful sometimes because they could kind of help communicate. They won't communicate for the person, but they could help enable them to communicate with them. So they can meet before the job interview to practice. Sometimes they help attend classes as well that would help guide the person. So it's what they would do is identify the barrier for employment, and then based on that barrier, they come up with a plan to be able to address it.
Okay, so what could work with these students then is if one of the faculty agreed to do like a mock interview, you could have a career coach there who could watch the interactions, because these are very specialized interviews. Who might be able to, like, once they saw the kinds of questions being asked and things, might be able to better help guide the student especially if we did a mock.
Yes.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. That's really helpful.
You're welcome.
I was going to share from the CAE perspective, if it is a student, they certainly could connect with their CAE disability specialist, and they could walk through some of the kind of maybe disability barriers, talk about some disability management, and similarly, kind of help them provide that feedback to them as well. So in addition to doing some targeted programming about kind of what's next, after graduation and when to disclose and how to navigate some of these things, they can work one-on-one with their disability specialist on those types of skill building.
Oh, great. And Grace, just to clarify, so if I have a student who's really struggling with, say, this TA, I have a student who's struggling with TA. Is that something that you can also support?
So Norma on the if she's around, might be able to answer that a little bit better than me, just because I focus on the med school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I have not been visibly present, but I'm the director of the Center for Accessible Education. So for accommodations for TAs, it sounds like that's what you're asking about, Erin. Students would go through insurance and risk management's disability management services. So through insurance and risk management, that's where any employees would work on getting accommodations implemented. So TAs fall under, within the university, they fall under that employee category as opposed to a student category while they're working in that TA capacity. So that's where they would go to coordinate accommodations.
Okay, but if my student is having these issues, their first stop might be to go to CAE so that you could guide them to this.
Yep, that's
Okay.
Totally fine. Yep.
Okay.
And their CAE specialist may be able to support with some like skill building and some guidance as well in that regard. But for any implementation of accommodations, we would definitely refer them then to IRM. And it's they have a very, very clear information on their website. So I would encourage any faculty or other support folks to also refer them directly there because they would ultimately need to do that for any accommodations.
Okay, and I would imagine that skill building is something that this student is concerned about because I think they're just feeling really out of their element as TAs, as a TA, I should say. Okay, thank you. That was really helpful. I don't want to take up any more of your time, but that was nice to know that there are spaces for PhDs. Hi, Larry.
And there, I might also just make a plug for the Graduate Student Resource Center. I don't know about all of their resources, but I do think that they also provide some resources specific to kind of the TA experience and things like that.
Actually, the Center for the Advancement of Teaching does that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can I throw a question out there too?
Sure, please go ahead.
Thanks for sharing these resources, and hopefully, can we get your slides too so that I can share them, say, with some of our students experiencing disability as well, that so that they can just have that all there, and perhaps that could be helpful. My question is kind of like Aaron. So I lead career services for the Master of Science in Business Analytics program over at Anderson. And we have one student in particular who was a stroke victim. She started our program last year and then had a stroke a little bit in and had to leave, and then came back, and now has been soldering on and completing our very advanced curriculum, and has been interviewing for internships and having a hard time kind of managing everything all at the same time. My question is are there ever any, in a sense, advantages given on the company side from your own experience to students who have disabilities, in a sense of, to help them through the recruiting process, to help them maybe even meet certain goals they have in terms of diversity and inclusion goals? Are there particular sort of departments within companies that focus on these things? Just wanted to tap your experience in this regard, see if you know anything. Am I even on the right track in my thinking? And by the way, our students sort of look at, if you can imagine, just sort of the top tech firms and financial firms and entertainment firms, etc. I mean, our students are going for roles in the biggest firms around.
You know, I can't provide an answer with any real certainty, but I do know that in a number of industries, there are efforts to increase representation of individuals with disabilities in those industries. So I do think that that's, you know, one thing for consideration. Also, when students are applying for some of these positions, I think some, against certain types of industries and certain applications will have an option for individuals to identify or to indicate if they identify as a person with a disability, and to also request any assistance that might be needed as a part of the application process, really more to ensure that the application and interview process is accessible to them, but not in, like I wouldn't say that affirmative action type of efforts are in play when it comes to folks with disabilities, but I do think that there are just other other industries and companies that do have a value and a lens on the value that individuals with disabilities bring to the workplace. So I think it's very case by case in that sense.
Including Best Buddies, which I am a participant in. They have a myriad of connections in entertainment and tech firms especially. And I would just follow through on that. If you look at the students' supported employment company, if they are assisted by supported employment, those who give you the best answer, just from personal experience.
And I would say there is a movement for, like, JP Morgan Chase is a great example. Like, there are businesses that are creating whole divisions, as you know, looking at the neurodiversity, piece of it. Ernst & Young is another one like that. On LinkedIn, you'll see a lot of organizations and businesses start to lean into that. Also, kind of thanks to the pandemic, we're looking a lot more at digital accessibility. So they're looking for individuals that have disabilities to test some of the accessibility of products and applications and things like that as well. So, if someone was interested in looking for companies that were seeking out individuals with disabilities, LinkedIn is a great resource for that.
Thank you. And Sam, how would I learn more about Best Buddies? And maybe did you discuss this earlier today, and did I miss it because I've been kind of coming in and out?
I did not. Well, Best Buddies is a nationally recognized supported employment organization. Has been around for what, 50 years roughly. And they're just one of many supported employment organizations that are active in the Los Angeles area. Their website is bestbuddies.org. They're mostly operating within schools, and only recently have they transitioned into supported employment programs. But thanks to their background, they were founded by the Shriver wing of the Kennedy family. They do have, like I said, a massive connections in entertainment and tech firms. And they are why I have this internship. So I'm grateful to them
Oh, that's great.
for that.
Thank you. Thanks for enlightening me.
And thank you. I wanted to add, there's also different types of tax incentives and credits for employers that do hire people with a disability. If you're familiar with ODIP, the Office of with Department of Labor for Disability, they have a really good resource page that kind of lists the different types of like tax incentives or breaks that employers can have. There is a really good movement working towards employment first for people with disabilities. And then with Westside Regional Center in particular, if somebody is eligible for Westside, we currently have a program that was approved this fiscal year to be able to provide a paid internship opportunity for somebody with a developmental disability. It's at no cost to the employer. So it's been a really good way that employers that perhaps in the past may not have hired somebody with disability or not familiar. In this case, Westside would pay the wages of the person or reimburse the employer for that. And it allows an opportunity to really kind of do a what's the word, like a work on the job training. And then the idea is that on the job training provides the person with the disability that skill set to be able to learn and master the job. And then the idea is that the employer would see the value of the person working with the disability and be able to hire that person. They don't necessarily have to hire, but it has to kind of at least be open for that. So that's a good resource as well.
Thanks. And do you see that, Lydia, even with more advanced skills? I mean, so our students are data scientists and data analysts and those, that type of level.
Yeah, if with Westside, as long as the person is eligible, if the person is diagnosed with a developmental disability, they're eligible for the PIP program as long as they're 18 years and older.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm just gonna discontinue the recording. Thank you, everyone.